Hello everyone and welcome back to UK Homicide. If you're new here, please take a moment to subscribe, like and share so you won't miss any updates or new cases. Today we're discussing the death of Nicholas Billingham, or Nick as he was known. This case is filled with questions of identity, premeditation, relationship dynamics, and cover-up. We will look at the chain of events, what led up to the murder, any warning signs, and who could have been capable of committing such an act. So let's dive in and look at Nick's story together. Nick, aged 42, and his partner Fiona Beale, aged 50, lived on Moore Street in Northampton. Nick worked as a builder, and Fiona was a 6th grade teacher. For those on YouTube, you can see Fiona, 4 months before Nick's murder, dancing and looking very relaxed in her school classroom. In 2021 and 2022, we all lived under COVID restrictions. So here's a question for you. Could this be a good time for someone to go missing and their disappearance to go undetected for months? The events leading up to the murder of Nick were marked by a complex and tumultuous relationship with Fiona. The couple had been together for 17 years, and their dynamic became increasingly toxic. Fiona expressed her frustrations about his controlling behavior, including remarks about her appearance and lifestyle, as well as his infidelities, in her numerous diary entries, including that he had fathered a child with another woman, which, unsurprisingly, really strained their relationship, as they had no children themselves. The meticulously planned and documented murder of Nick happened between late October and early November 2021. During this time, we see Fiona referring to an alter ego called Tulip22. After Nick's death, Fiona attempted to maintain the pretense that Nick was still alive, telling friends and family that they were isolated due to COVID-19. She continued to live normally, even briefly returning to work as a primary school teacher, all while sending messages from Nick's phone to maintain the appearance that he was still alive, and later, that he had left her. If you are on YouTube, you can see screenshots of these phone messages. Fiona even had Nick's mom round at Christmas, knowing he was buried only feet away in the garden.
I walked in the house, into the living room, and the first thing I said, "Oh, have you had a turnaround of, your furniture all looks different." Fiona offered me a Christmas drink. I said, "Oh, thank you." So I sat there with this drink, but then it always gets to me because I think Nick was buried in the garden, just a few feet away, and I didn't know he was there. I try not to think about it too much, but when I do, it's sort of draining. It's, horrible. How you could hate somebody that much to do what she did, I can't believe it.
Her elaborate cover-up continued until March 2022, when her mental health deteriorated, and Nick was eventually reported missing by the head teacher of Eastfield Academy, where Fiona worked. An extensive police hunt found her in a High Bournes lodge near Windermere in Cumbria. Here, she had attempted to self-exit by taking an overdose. As well as finding Fiona, police found journals confessing to Nick's murder and revealing the extent of her deception and the location of his body. Nick was found 4 months after burial, under layers of concrete and sheeting in their back garden. We'll watch the video of her buying these supplies later. She hadn't even attempted to dispose of the blood-soaked mattress. It was just thrown in the basement. And she even used Nick's card to buy new bedding and cleaning supplies. Journal entries. "It was harder than I thought it would be," she wrote. "Hiding a body was bad. Moving a body is much more difficult than it looks on TV." In another entry, she wrote about the night she murdered Nick. "While he was in the bath, I kept the knife in my dressing gown pocket and hid it in the drawer next to the bed. I brought a chisel, bin bag, and cable ties up too. I got him to wear an eye mask. I thought about leaving him, but the things he said and did revealed my dark side," she wrote. "I call her Tulip22. She's reckless, fearless, and efficient, ruthless. I started plotting as Tulip22 after he'd gone to bed." Fiona had 2 trials, the first at Northampton Crown Court, and the second at the Old Bailey in London. Fiona's first trial at Northampton Crown Court occurred in October 2022. However, the judge declared a mistrial due to legal issues, specifically concerns about the jury's ability to reach a fair verdict stemming from procedural irregularities. The second trial at the Old Bailey lasted 3 weeks and concluded in May 2024. Fiona was represented by Andrew Wheeler KC. He claimed that she was a victim of a coercive and controlling relationship, citing psychological trauma and arguing diminished responsibility due to her mental state and PTSD at the time of the murder. Fiona's defense focused on 4 key points. Number 1. Mental health. They suggested that her state of mind was affected by years of emotional and psychological abuse. Number 2. Manslaughter versus murder. Initially, Fiona pleaded not guilty to murder, but admitted to manslaughter, contending that her actions were not intended. The defense sought to portray the killing as a response to ongoing abuse, as opposed to a calculated act. Number 3. Alter ego. Evidence was presented regarding her diary entries, where she described her alter ego, Tulip 22. Fiona claimed that this ego influenced her actions and reflected her psychological struggles and dissociation from them. Finally, number 4. The defense suggested that the altercation leading to the murder was not planned, framing it as a tragic culmination of a toxic relationship rather than a deliberate act. However, as the trial progressed, the defense had to shift to focus on a partial defense of loss of control rather than diminished responsibility. The prosecution, led by Stephen Perry NKC, argued that Fiona had planned the murder of Nick and executed it with premeditation. They highlighted her extensive efforts to conceal the crime, including wrapping his body in plastic and burying it in the garden, whilst maintaining the cover that he had left her for another woman. The prosecution focused on the following. Firstly, the premeditation and execution. The prosecution described the murder as a carefully planned domestic execution. Fiona had lured Nick to bed under the pretense of intimacy, only to stab him in the neck. This act was characterized by using a knife and a chisel, indicating forethought and planning. Cover-up efforts. After the murder, Fiona engaged in an extensive cover-up. She wrapped Nick's body in plastic, dragged it downstairs, and buried it in the garden of their Northampton home. During the 10 days following the murder, she told family and friends that they were isolated due to COVID-19 and sent messages from Nick's phone to fabricate a story that he had left her for another woman. This cover-up and planning ultimately lasted from October 2021 to March 2022. Psychological manipulation. The prosecution highlighted Fiona's actions as deceptive, noting that she maintained a facade of normalcy by returning to work and interacting with Nick's family, even having Christmas drinks with them while concealing the truth about his death. This portrayal painted Fiona as manipulative and cold-hearted. Evidence of guilt. The evidence presented included Fiona's own journal entries, which documented her mental state and reflections on the murder. These entries detailed her planning and execution of the crime, providing chilling insights into her mindset. She described plotting the murder, mentioning how she concealed a knife in her dressing gown and prepared items like a chisel and cable ties.
And then got high and let Tulip 22 out. I knew I couldn't let him get away with it. Halloween sealed it. He was vile.
CCTV evidence played a significant role in this case. As we will see, she purchased materials used to cover the area in their garden where she buried Nick's body. We will look at this video after the prosecution and defense rebuttal. The prosecution argued against the defense's portrayal of Fiona as a victim of coercive control. They asserted that her actions were those of a perpetrator who had exploited her partner's vulnerabilities rather than someone acting solely in response to abuse. In summary, the prosecution's case was built on the themes of premeditation, deceit, and a calculated effort to mislead authorities and families. So let's look at the video I described earlier. This shows Fiona buying 500 liters of compost, 220 kilograms of stone, and a gray plastic trough. During the trial, victim impact statements highlighted the profound grief and betrayal felt by his family. Yvonne Valentine, Nick's mother, described the horror of having shared a Christmas drink with Fiona, now knowing her son was buried just feet away.
I walked in the house into the living room, and the first thing I said, "Oh, have you had a turnaround of, your furniture all looks different." Fiona offered me a Christmas drink. I said, "Oh, thank you." So I sat there with this drink, but then it always gets to me because I think Nick was buried in the garden, just a few feet away, and I didn't know he was there. I try not to think about it too much, but when I do, it just it's sort of draining. It's horrible. How you could hate somebody that much to do what she did, I can't believe it. And apparently his last word was "why" when she stabbed him in the neck.
On May 30th, 2024, His Honor Judge Mark Lucraft KC sentenced Fiona to life in prison, with a minimum term of 20 years. Judge Mark Lucraft KC emphasized the callous nature of Fiona's actions, noting she had engaged in a carefully planned domestic execution. He remarked that her behavior demonstrated extraordinary evil, stating, "There was lie after lie."
In my judgment, taking an initial start point of 15 years for the minimum term, the aggravating factors I have identified lead to a very significant upward adjustment to, or very close to, a minimum term of 25 years. Making allowance for the mitigating factors I have identified, that brings the minimum term down to 20 years, before then making the adjustment for your plea that I've identified, a minimum term of 20 years duration. I do not wish there to be any misunderstanding as the sentence passed. As with the passing of any life sentence, it is that, a life sentence, in your case life imprisonment. In determining the minimum term, the court is not saying that you will be released at that date. The sentence is one of life imprisonment. The minimum term is the term you must serve before the parole board can consider your case and consider whether you are someone where it is safe for you then to be released on licence or not. The earliest that can happen is in 20 years, less the 801 days that you've been on remand. On my calculations, 17 years and 294 days.
Today, our family welcomes the lengthy sentence handed down by the court to Fiona Beale for the brutal murder of our son, Nick Billingham, in November 2021. Nothing will ever make up for the pain we have suffered for the now more than 2.5 years since, but at least we can sleep safe in the knowledge that Beale will be locked away for many years, during which she will have more than enough time to reflect on her actions. She has demonstrated extraordinary evil. Behind her facade as a kindly schoolteacher, she was secretly planning the cold-blooded killing of Nick. Once the deed was done, she went to great lengths to conceal his body, dumping him in an impromptu grave like rubbish, before carrying on with her life as if nothing had happened. You can probably only imagine the sense of shock and devastation when we learned in March 2022 that Nick had been taken from us some 4 months earlier. 4 months during which myself and others close to him continued to receive messages from him as if Nick, just 42, was still alive, well, and moving on with his life. How far from the truth that was. Imagine how, on reflection, the revulsion one felt that at that day on Christmas 2021, when invited for a drink at her home. Devoid of emotion, Beale simply sat, looking at me, the mother of the man whose discarded body she had single-handedly buried just feet away. Beale is pure evil, a monster who must now spend many years ahead of her asking why she killed my Nick. A good father, a good friend, and a much-loved son.
Nick's funeral took place on April 19, 2022. His family expressed deep sorrow over his passing and shared heartfelt tributes to him, describing him as a cherished individual who would be greatly missed. They highlighted the joy he brought to their lives and reflected on their many happy memories. Nick's legacy brought awareness to mental health support and awareness of DV support systems. Remember and share the international sign for DV in the event that you or someone else needs to non-verbally ask for help. This is for any gender and any age. If you are watching on YouTube, please share this with friends and family. And if you are listening by audio only, please consider watching this brief section.
Hey, you there? Can you hear me? If you can hear me, can you say something? Hello, can you hear me? Nothing.
Are you on the phone?
No. No, I'm not. I'm not.
Talking can be risky. Instead, try this. Amy is in danger. Her abuser is standing in the background, so she has to be very careful.
Oh, can you share that banana bread recipe?
First, keep the conversation going.
It's actually my mom's banana bread recipe, but it's pretty foolproof and it's
Then,
super easy.
use this discreet hand gesture.
Well, I appreciate it. I know your mom is a great baker, so I should be good.
Created by the Canadian Women's Foundation, this discreet hand signal lets people know you're in danger. If you see this, call emergency services. This video might just save your life. Seriously.
If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please reach out for help. Resources are available, and no one should face this alone. But please remember, if you do contact someone for help, you need to clear your search history or call log. Thank you for watching and remembering Nick with me. Let me know your thoughts about this case. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more cases. Take care, stay safe, and look out for each other. Until next time, bye.